awesome guest. I'm realizing I'm saying the same thing every week, but just stick with me. So I have a really great guest this evening, and before I say that, I want to say that week I notified everyone about my friend Miss May, who is stuck in Houston. Her family is down there, and I just wanted everyone to know. I made a quick little video on YouTube tonight, but she is safe. Her family is they're getting there. They finally got their electricity turned back on. She doesn't have. I don't believe she has access to the internet right now, so she can't do she can't upload video right now. But just kind of keep her in your mind, and she is if you have questions, you can contact me and I'll get that information right to you. But I just wanted to just let people know, because she's important. And one of the things I love so much, YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all of this, is this community of teachers that keeps growing and growing and growing to the point where there are people that we actually care about. So all that to say again, Miss May and her family are doing better, although things are not great in Houston still, but she just wanted me to pass along the fact that she was doing well.
She does not know
so what's this DB error? I don't know what that means, but all right, I'm going to jump right into this. So this evening's guest is someone I'm really excited to talk about. I mean, the great thing about having your own show is you only get to invite people that you're actually excited about. So it makes it fun every week. So my guest is Alex Kajitani. Many of you educators have already heard of him. If you've seen him on YouTube, he's done TED Talks. He's been on CBS's Evening News. He's written a number of books, including Owning It. And he is known as the Rappin Mathematician. He was California's Teacher of the Year. And so he is my guest this evening. If you have questions, you can go ahead and start in the comment section below, or if you're on YouNow, you can leave them right in the side, and we'll get to all those questions. But I'm going to guest him in. We're going to kick this off, because it's going to work this time easily. I'm willing it into existence. There it is. Evening News. He's written a number of. There it is. Alex.
Hey. Yeah. How's it going? Good. How are yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm a little sweaty. I just came in from playing Nerf Wars outside with my kids, but other than that, we're good. We're good over here.
Hey, very nice. Wow.
Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I heard your intro about the teacher in Houston, and man, I just sending all our love and prayers that way. I've been glued to the news like most of the country, and I've done so much work across Texas and made so many amazing teacher friends. So just one more shout out to all of you and all my friends in Texas. Hope things are starting to go your way.
It's so funny once you know someone there, right? Like as soon as you know somebody, it's like it becomes personal and it means so much more. That kind of it's not just the news that's going on, but it's like, oh, these are my friends. These are people that I know that are there. So
yeah, it's really true.
So well, I know she was even excited about you being on this evening.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So hopefully she catches the rebroadcast. But Alex, could you, for people, I mean, I did an intro, but like for people that don't know who you are, or what grade do you teach, where are you located, that sort of thing. Could you give them a little intro on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my career, I've been a middle school math teacher in Escondido, California, which is in Northeast San Diego. And so I've, like I said, spent many years teaching middle school math. And then I am known, as you said, around the world now as the Rappin Mathematician. But I didn't always start out that way. In fact, several years ago, I was a brand new teacher just struggling to survive in my classroom. And I couldn't get the students to pay attention. I couldn't get them to remember, the math rules that I had just taught them. But what I realized is a rap song would come out on Monday. And by Tuesday, they seemed to have every single word memorized. And so I began sort of rapping about my lessons. And the first time I tried it, it was an absolute disaster. The students pretty much laughed me out of the room. But later that day, they were actually singing all the songs. And the next day, I think they actually ran into my class with the same amount of energy that they normally ran out of my class with. And so we started together with my students creating rap songs and rap music videos that have, I think altogether been, almost a million views, I think. They're pretty much all over YouTube and the internet. And then in 2009, I got to be the California Teacher of the Year and made it to be one of the top four finalists for National Teacher of the Year. Wow. And so at that point, I got to, really go around and represent teachers and in many cases speak on behalf of teachers. And I started presenting and writing a couple books, one of them Owning It, which you mentioned. Really excited because that book was named recommended reading by the U.S. Department of Education. And then more recently, teamed up with Chicken Soup for the Soul to put out Inspiration for Teachers. And so that one's only been out a few months, but it's already getting great reviews. And so I'm really now just really devoted to motivating teachers and keeping them motivated, really all year long.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
It came up in my PD the other day. Folks were talking about how February is the worst month of the year. And so I literally, as someone said that, I wrote down on my notebook, February will be the greatest month of the year. And so how in the classroom or like amongst, maybe this is like in school sometimes, stay motivated all year? Like, what are some of your tips that you can give teachers to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, we kind of all know what happens in February, right? The newness of school has worn off. The end isn't quite in sight yet, right? It's like if you're going through a tunnel, it's that part of the tunnel where you've lost the light from the beginning and you can't quite see the light at the end. And then, as they say, you're just hoping the light isn't actually a train coming towards you. But there really are. So first of all, I think it's important to recognize that, as a teacher, if you find yourself less motivated, often starting in October, maybe November, and then especially in February, first of all, that's okay. It's normal. It doesn't mean that, you're not such a great teacher, or it doesn't mean that you're losing control of your classroom. It doesn't mean all the things that we sometimes think that it means. What it often just means is, stopping, recognizing that, teachers across the country are dealing with some of these same emotions, and that it's something that will pass and something that you'll get through. That being said, there really are three things that I always recommend teachers, for teachers to sort of fight against burnout. The first one is really to fall back, whenever you're feeling burnt out, whenever you need some advice, things like that, to fall back on your network. Whether it is a show like yours where you can, virtually be online with people who are dealing with the same issues or who are seeking advice or giving advice, but to really fall back on your network of teachers. And it doesn't necessarily need to be teachers, in your school or in your building. Adam Grant wrote a great book called Give and Take. And really what he shows is that, 3 decades of research show that the most robust antidote to burnout is having a good, solid network of teachers, people that you can go and sit in their class for 20 minutes and watch how they teach, people that you can, go cry or go scream or go yell. But when you surround yourself with people who are, doing their best to stay motivated, you really have no choice but to try to continue to be motivated yourself. So surrounding yourself with good teachers, with good educators, and then really tapping into that network, not just sitting in your class by yourself, praying for June. So that's the first one.
So I want to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
I just want to underline something. I think especially new teachers can feel so busy, or they feel like they're going it alone and they just hold up in their classroom. It's just them and the kids. And it's so important to make friends, to go to dinner, to, have lunch with other people. Like, that's super, super important. And I just didn't want that to go like unsaid, because I think that you made is really, really important. So I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No, that's okay. I can go all day. So,
me too.
And that actually leads to really another good point. And this is one of the things that I write, the suggestions that I give in my book, Owning It, is, if you're a new teacher, I mean, you don't have to be a new teacher, but new teachers especially, very simple. Go to your principal and say, or, go to somebody that you respect on campus and say, hey, who are some of the most effective teachers on this campus? And they'll say a couple of names, and just go to those teachers and say, hey, somebody said that, I asked the principal who some of the most effective teachers on this campus are, and your name was mentioned. Would it be okay if, on my prep period or or at some point I came in and sort of sat in on your classroom for 10 or 15 minutes. Any great teacher is going to say, yeah, absolutely, of course. And then you're going to go and you're going to be amazed. You're going to see absolutely amazing things happening in that classroom, or at least things that you're now going to want to talk about. And take the time, discuss what you saw with that teacher, glean some of their insights, and then say to them, hey, by the way, who would you recommend that I go talk to next? And what you're essentially doing is you're starting to build your teacher network within that school, but you are building it based on the recommendations of the people who are already really good. The truth is, really good teachers hang out with really good teachers, and the complaining teachers hang out with the complaining teachers. So get yourself into that network of really good teachers, and then at some point during the year you realize, I am among this group, and surrounding yourself with good people, best thing you can do. Second, you kind of brought this up as we get, real busy, but the second thing I always recommend for teachers to stay motivated all year is you've got to learn how to say no. Yep. There is always an opportunity to do something in education. There is always a committee that you'll be asked to join. There's always, a recess duty that you can fill in for. And there's always, a new project to take on, but really being able to confidently say no, and so to things is really going to actually open things up and help you to continue on your path and to stay motivated. Yes. Some of the things that I always recommend that teachers can say, you can just say, oh, you know what, an offer comes in to join the XYZ committee. And you can say, oh, you know what, that sounds really cool, but right now I'm really focusing on, having solid classroom management in my first year, or whatever it is that you feel like you're focusing on or you need to focus on. And have things that that you're focusing on, which then allows you to say no to other things. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think also, if I was going to add something to that, I would say one is, I always tell teachers that when you're feeling burnt out and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, just find that one kid that day, like the next day that you go into school, someone's going to feel alone. Someone feels like they don't have anyone, that they have no idea, that no one sees them, and just let some kid know that you see them. And that, giving that will totally come back to you, and then do that for someone else and someone else. And that could be with a teacher too. So those new teachers that are in their rooms, I'll sometimes if I'm at the grocery store, I'll pick up a $4 thing of flowers and leave it on someone's desk. Or I'll do one of the things I do that's kind of weird is I'll replace people's pictures in their rooms with pictures of me. And then, because I just think this is hilarious. And what I'm trying to do is just shift your everyday, right? So especially as a teacher, a lot of us are so routine that to come in and see something completely ridiculous, it just shifts your day a little bit. And changes things up for the kids and can shift your mood. And I think that also blends into learning how to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Realizing that the work is never done. I can't tell you how many times my wife has asked me, are you finished? Are you done your lesson plans? Are you finished doing work? It's it's never done. I could always do something. So learn to kind of shut that off, and then finding something that's actually rehabilitating to you, whether it's taking a run or walking with your dog or playing a game with your kids, and that stuff. It seems like you're not doing anything, but you're really, really doing something for yourself, and it helps so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny because I remember my first year of teaching. One of I live in Southern California, and so I've always grown up doing a lot of surfing. And so one day, one of the teachers walked into my class, and I think it was actually in February, and he walked in. He said, "Hey, I hear you're a surfer." I said, "Yeah." He said, "So am I." He said, "Every Thursday, right after school, a few of us just leave everything in our room. We go surfing for a few hours, and then we often finish it up later that night or whatever. Why don't you come join us?" And so, I had sort of gotten in this routine of, school ends at 3, then I work my tail off until 6 o'clock, then I get a drive-through burrito, pound that thing on the way home, work for a little bit more, and then go to bed, wake up, do it all over. And so this first Thursday, it was magical. I remember, we dropped everything, we closed up our classrooms, we went surfing for a couple hours. Well, I mean, complete perspective change. I went from being totally burned out to being totally re-energized and engaged. And, I was doing it with other colleagues. So, we're sort of joking about certain students or, just sort of the things that you talk about when you're teachers and you're together. And so just intentionally taking that time to refresh yourself, to rejuvenate yourself, kind of cliche in the teaching world, but there really is a reason why on the airplane they say, in case of emergency, you put on your oxygen mask first. It's because, if you're not breathing, you really can't help anybody else. And what's fascinating also about getting away from your classroom and doing something that you love to do, what I've always found is in those moments that you're actually not thinking about it, in those moments that you've actually gotten away from it all, those are when your absolute best teaching ideas just come pouring into your brain. And so it only happens if, you really fill that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're saying also lends itself to the idea of like having that like surfing time on Thursday when you're dragging through Thursday, or if like it's particularly difficult, you have something to look forward to. And so I think
totally
things through the year, like one of the things I'm trying to do this year for my students is put successful people in front of them so that what I want them to do is like see real world examples and not just me talking about in theory what happened to go to college or how hard it is to start a new business or like what it takes to be successful, but finding folks through the internet that are going to come and talk to my kids. And that is really exciting for me too, because it gives me something to look forward to. So if February is a drag, I know that February 12th, we're taking a trip out to Brooklyn to go see this artist that I really like, who's worked with everyone. And I get to be really excited about that. Or last year, we took a trip. I took kids for the first time ever. My school went abroad and we went to Costa Rica. And that had kids like pumped for months that they were excited. Yeah. So make it, and it doesn't have to be, I mean, you don't have to go to Costa Rica, but like it could be something little, like every third Friday you go out with your colleagues, but you have something to look forward to, or you have someone coming into school or a project that gets you really, really excited about the year, and excited about what's going on next.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, and also there, let's be honest here. There are days when you're dragging yourself into school. There are days when you're driving to work thinking about, did I choose the right profession, or did I, you're thinking about all of the reasons why you might not want to go to work that day. But then you pull into that school parking lot, and you see the kids. And, maybe you're in your classroom and they start to come in and you realize, who sets the tone here? I set the tone. I'm the one who determines whether this class is going to be an amazing day in class or just another drab day. I'm the one who sets the tone. And it doesn't mean, I'm not saying, I'm not saying not to be real or to fake it, but I'm saying to realize, when you realize that the way that class period goes really depends on the person leading the class. And the person leading that class is you. And just making that decision to, even if you've got to, sort of fake it till you make it a little bit, you start doing something, you start pretending like you're happy, suddenly, you're going to, your whole mood is going to shift, and it's going to set that tone. And that's really, the third idea that I was going to share for really staying motivated all year is that whenever possible, I always encourage teachers to seek out the best possible professional development that they can. We are a profession where we are constantly teaching other people. So being taught ourselves new ideas, new techniques, new technologies, new strategies is some of the most important one of the most important things that you can do to stay motivated. I get to go and speak at conferences and do professional developments all over the country. And one of my favorite times to do it is in February. School districts or schools will bring me in the middle of February, and we call it mid-year motivation. But teachers will come up to me and they'll say, oh, that was exactly what I needed to get through the next month, or to get through the next year, or whatever the case may be. But whether you are seeking out professional development, by being friends with you on Twitter, which is amazing professional development, which is watching shows like this, which is, just doing something different in your department meetings, or finding a conference that's nearby, or you hear about a conference that's nearby, just walk into your principal's office and say, hey, I'd really like to go to this conference. Do you think you could, do we have the funding to send me and maybe a couple other of my colleagues? But taking that time to intentionally gain skills, get new ideas. And I mean, when you hear an amazing speaker, it really helps you to reassert why it is you're going into that classroom every single day. As the famous Zig Ziglar once said, people say motivation doesn't last, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily.
Absolutely. It's that's really good. I've never heard that quote from him before. Yeah, I think that is so important in ways that, like, I have a book by this. He's a priest that lives in like, what is it? I don't know. Some part. What am I thinking of? All right, he lives in Los Angeles. Works with gang members, and so he has a book. His name's Father Gregory Boyle, and he has this book called Tattoo. So he talks about, like, these individuals that he works with, and one of my favorite thing about him is that he never gives up on anyone. Like, you could go to prison, something horrific could happen in your life, you could do the worst thing imaginable, but he still will keep showing up for you and keep trying to, like, help you and love you for who you are and not for who he wants you to be. And I just love that idea. And so that's one of those go-to books for me that, like, when I'm not feeling it, I'll spend my prep, 10 minutes reading that kind of, like, gets me going, or, listening to the right song or whatever it is, or, like, locking my door and doing a bunch of push-ups so that I can just, like, amp myself up. That is what's going to push you through the rest of the day. And then you're right, like, that stuff's contagious. So if you're excited, even if you have to fake it in the beginning, what happens is your students get excited. So I don't let anyone go to the bathroom in my class. I go, listen, I literally planned the best lesson of your day today. So you need 10 minutes. If you're not buying it, you can go to the bathroom if you need to. But, like, let me see what I got first. And so that kind of energy is completely contagious. And then it's contagious to your coworkers as well. When you're in the hallway and you're shaking hands and you're saying what's up to kids and you're high-fiving people, like, that is contagious to other people as well. And it's, like, it's worth all of your time and energy, and then you don't have to keep faking it, because you're gonna feed off the kids' energy also, and it's like you're just starting the fire, and then you get to, like, just appreciate as you're going through your day.
I think that's really important. And the other thing to remember, I think, is sometimes as adults, when we stop and have a conversation with a kid, especially in schools like the schools where we work, sometimes when we stop and say hi to a kid or have a conversation with a kid, it's the first time an adult has recognized them since they left school the day before, or since they left school on Friday. And so, we can never underestimate just the power of saying hello to somebody. Before I was a teacher, I actually managed a seafood restaurant in Santa Barbara, California. And that the restaurant business is an entire industry built on saying hello to people, recognizing people, serving people. And I was absolutely astonished when I got to education. I couldn't believe the amount of adults who were just walking by each other, not in every school, but in a lot of schools. They were walking by each other, coffee in hand, head down, not saying hello. And so, when you just stop and say hello to somebody, again, it doesn't even have to be a big, long conversation. What you're saying is, I see you, I recognize you, and I'm glad that you're here. And those looks, those waves, those nods, that can mean the difference between whether a kid feels like somebody wants them there and recognizes them, and whether they just feel like they're completely lost in this culture of their school.
Yeah, Alex, you're saying all the same. I can't even follow it up with anything, because I would say the same exact thing. So many kids fly under the radar, and to just put a hand on someone's shoulder and to say, "Yo, man, I'm so glad that you're here today," or, like, "Hey, you got a new haircut," or, like, "Hey, I like your new shoes," or you've been doing a really great job lately. And for kids that don't want that public announcement, I'll write it on little Post-it notes, and when I'm walking around the classroom, just leave it on your desk, and then it's private.
That's a great idea.
And you don't have to put them on blast. As my students would say, put them on blast.
Right.
Other teachers too, but sometimes I love putting people on blast where the former owner of the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team, Pat Croce, once said, like, if someone doesn't respond to a hello, you need to give them the sonic boom hello. So I'm big on being in the hallway and like yelling down the hallway what's up to someone, or like, how you doing today, or like, yo, I'm so glad you're here. And I teach all boys at my school, so 15-year-old boys are too busy like trying to be cool that it really
right.
off-putting to them that like, what are you doing? Or driving into school. This is one of my favorite things to do because I'm old and I like to embarrass children.
Right.
Is I'll drive to school and I'll yell out my window like, I'll see you in a couple minutes. Like, I'm super pumped that you're here today. And they get into school and they're like, why are you yelling to me on the street? Like, I'm trying to be cool. But
yeah,
I do it because I can tell that they love it also. Like, someone's acknowledging you. They're saying that they're happy that you're alive. And for some kids, that is a huge uptick in their day. So, yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I actually talk about that a lot. I call it the honk and wave.
Yeah.
And basically, you're stopped, just like you said, you're stopped at that red light. You see it's 7:30 in the morning. You see one of your students across the street. Don't miss that opportunity. Sometimes it's beep beep. Hey, I'll see you soon. Or sometimes it's even like But the truth is, especially in middle school and high school, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but it's 7:30 in the morning. You're driving to school. School is that way. You see one of your kids walking that way. Like you get them. You stop. You get them to turn around and get back to school. I mean, you might just change the trajectory of their entire day. I mean, you might change the trajectory of their entire life depending on what they were going to do at 7:30 in the morning, walking away from school. I don't know the research, but I believe nothing good has ever come from a kid walking away from school at 7:30 in the morning. And so just getting them to turn around, just getting them to see you, it means everything.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Want to jump into some questions? Want to jump into some questions, Alex?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So first question is from Monique Hernandez. She says, how do you deal with behavioral students? What are some of your best tips and tricks? So how do you deal with like, I don't know, tricky behavior in students sometimes? What are some of your go-tos for that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first of all, not a mistake, but one of the things that it took me a while to figure out my first year of teaching was, I was really struggling with, 2 or 3 students. And for some reason, I had it in my head that they were only acting that way in my class. And one day I was able to go in and observe another class that one of these students was in, and I realized, wow, this student is acting exactly the same way in another class. And this is middle school. I realize it may be different in elementary schools and things like that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But then at lunch one day I was asking my team about it, and it turns out that this student, she was actually really, on task in some of her classes and totally off task in some of her other classes. And so sometimes it's actually before you're, talking to the student, before you're trying out all of these different strategies, sometimes it's just a matter of pull back, go look at their CUME file, go ask the counselor, if they have any insight on strategies to deal with them. Look up their schedule, ask some of their other teachers, or even ask that student, hey, who are some of the teachers that you respect the most on this campus? And go to those teachers and ask them what their strategies are for that. So really sort of stopping and just doing a little bit of research, into that student, maybe their home situation. I mean, sometimes when we learn about the home situations that our students come from, or, we meet their parents on back to school night or during parent conferences, you start taking their behavior less personally. And you really start to understand what it is they're going through. Sometimes, kids are just hungry. And a kid is acting a different way before lunch because they haven't eaten all morning. And they're totally mellow after lunch because they actually got some food in them. So again, it's taking that time and, and really sort of putting in some time in order to understand that student. That being said, as I guess sort of obvious and cliche as it sounds, the number one way to really prevent off-task behaviors or disruptive student behavior is, I think, to really have good, engaging, well-planned lessons. Like when you have good, engaging, well-planned lessons, that takes care of probably 80–85% of all behavior problems, or I should say potential behavior problems in your class. And so really putting the effort in, as they say, it's pay now or pay later. Or I saw a great billboard. I saw a great billboard when I was driving across South Dakota this summer. There's a big billboard for a gas station, and it said, "Gas now or gas can later." It had a little icon of the guy walking with a gas can. And so every minute that you pay off, every minute that you put in with putting in the time to create good lessons and build rapport with students totally pays off later. Now, that's 80–85%, right? Of course, there are always those other kids who are just going to be, really tough, really challenging, often really disruptive. And so I think, first of all, stopping. So, you're trying to teach a lesson and the kid, keeps on talking, right? And you've asked them to be quiet, stopping and asking yourself, okay, do I actually have a plan? Do I have a system of, expectations and consequences, something that I've communicated directly so that the student knows clearly, hey, first time you talk, I'm just going to ask you to please stop. That's a verbal warning. Second time you talk, I'm just going to write your name on the board, remind me that I've already talked to you once. Third time, I'm going to call home, or whatever the case may be. But having a well-structured ladder of interventions is going to, first of all, really help. And then, you don't have to get so worked up in why this, in how the student's behaving, or that you've already talked to them about 10 times. You're just going through your procedures. You're just going through your routines, and you're just sort of following the protocol that you said. So that's going to make the rest of your class so much easier to manage, because again, students acting up or being disruptive, you're just going through whatever it is. And sometimes you got to work with, your principal or whatever your school's discipline policy is to kind of create that. And then, one of the things that I've really learned is a lot of times with those really disruptive students, the real issue behind the behavior is they just aren't really sure what they're supposed to be doing at that moment. They're just not sure, they don't have the social awareness, and they're just not sure exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And, the truth is, no student, no adult, nobody likes to feel stupid or to be made to feel stupid. And so it's when we don't understand what's going on, we don't know what's going on in class, that's when so many kids have that tendency to act up. And so really just taking the time and seeing, okay, if a student's acting up, maybe they just don't understand what they're supposed to be doing at this moment. And so really identifying what that is, and then sometimes explaining that to them can make all the difference in the world. Of course, if you've got the super extreme case, I've called parents, but I've showed up at houses before, because you show up at a student's house just to say, hey, I know you had a really rough day today. I just want to check with your mom, make sure everything was okay. Maybe that student's not going to change their behavior right away, but over time, that behavior, I truly believe, is going to shift, because they're seeing that you're making the effort. So many students, they just want to see that you're in. They just want to see that you're all in and committed to them, and that you're not going to, scream and yell at them or rat them out or kick them out of class. They've had plenty of people bail on them throughout their lives, and they just want to see that you're in, that you're committed. And, and I know it is so hard. I mean, there are times when you see that student and you think to yourself, dude, aren't you ever absent? Yeah. It's okay to think that, but to start to own that, and to really sort of think of it as, hey, this is a year-long class, and I'm all in for your well-being all year long.
Yeah. I'm hearing myself all this. I think that's so important, because a couple of things that you said. One, the great lessons, I think, are key, and not enough people think of those. Or you can get sort of like, I don't know, you can kind of lose your wind a little bit if the kids don't seem really excited in what you're doing. But a lot of times kids aren't going to let you know that they're excited. I mean, teaching at an all-boys school, like the look I get all the time is this, but you'll find out later, like a kid will way out say, "Yeah, that was dope today," and I'm like, "Yeah, well,
Right.
your face was saying all kinds of other stuff right now." But and I think that's really important. I also think that having a great lesson, but having it start like at the bell, like the kids know
Yep.
exactly what to do when they come in, and not having that even 30-second lag in the beginning of class, because we all know as teachers, like if you've ever had 2 minutes left at the end of class and you didn't know what to do, that can feel like 2 years, because
Yeah.
you're just like, it's sitting on hot coals all of a sudden. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? So, and my other kind of big thing is building relationships with students. If someone is consistently having their head down in your class, they're completely uninterested, like pulling that kid aside and saying, what's going on? Or am I something that's off-putting to you? Like maybe I upset you. Maybe I did something that made you like want to become disengaged. And one of my favorite stories of the last 2 years, we'll say, is I had a student a couple of years ago, head down every single day, would just draw in his notebook, wouldn't even look at me when I spoke to him. And so I gave him detention, and he had detention for a week, and his detention was to eat lunch with me every single day. And every day of that week, my wife packed him a brown bag lunch, wrote his name on the front of it, and wrote a little note in it saying that, like, I don't know, I guess, I hope you have the best day. And all I did was ask him about himself. I didn't talk about him not doing work. I didn't talk about school at all. Yo, what kind of video games do you like? Or do you like drawing? Or what's your favorite movie, the last movie that you saw? And then that kind of stuff just shows kids, like you said, you're buying, that you actually, like, I care enough that I'm giving up every lunch of this week and I'm bringing
Yeah.
you something to just talk about you. This has nothing to do with me, but secretly it's like, what I'm trying to do is win you over so that you'll buy into what's going on here. And a lot of times those little conversations will lend themselves to someone going, you know what, it's just tough because like my dad's not around, or
Right.
someone passed away, or I have to keep moving, or I didn't really want to come to the school. I mean, I don't know one boy in the world that wants to go to an all-boys school. Like my guys come from, you have to wear a uniform. You're at an all-boys school. There's rules. It's like, on paper, it's the worst place you could imagine being. And so, I think so many times, and I know this because I just remember being a kid, when you're 14 and 15 years old, everyone's not asking your opinion all the time. You're in that limbo place of like, am I a kid or am I getting older? And once you start asking kids their opinions, seeing what they think, that can mean a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm kids come from wonderful homes and their parents talk to them a lot, but it's worth the effort to just put that into a kid, see what comes out of it. And you can be really surprised, because that student that I had that particular issue with, that ate lunch with me, has eaten lunch with me every single day since then.
Wow.
And now I have about 30 kids that eat lunch with me in my room. They just bring their lunches in. They have they can have quiet time if they want, or they can eat as a part of our group, and we either talk about, I don't know, Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or whatever TV show they're interested in, or whatever movie came out. And then I end up watching all of these movies that I did not want to see. Otherwise, I'm not interested in the Flash show. I can't get into it, but I watch stuff like that anyway, just because the kids are stoked about it. So
yeah, and I was going to say what there's also what can, to transition that into being a highly effective teacher too. You're a good teacher is you're paying attention to whatever the kids are talking about, but then you're sort of weaving that into your lessons the very next day. And so I always say we got to stop trying to take the curriculum and forcing it into the students' lives, and instead take the students' lives and see where it fits into the curriculum. So, you start that class off by talking about The Walking Dead or whatever it is that they're interested in, and then, somehow relating that to the history lesson or the science lesson or the math lesson or whatever the case may be, and then taking that and then moving that into the academic content that they need to know. Again, stop always taking the curriculum and forcing it into their life. Take their life and say, okay, where can this fit into the curriculum? And again,
Yeah.
that's, there are happy teachers and there are highly effective teachers. And the ones who make it through the year, the ones who, really have a successful career, they're the people who are highly effective and love what they do.
Yeah, 100%. Next question is, Good Day South America asks, sure, how does your community in which you teach and live have an effect on your quality of life? How easy or hard is it to switch those things up if they're not working for you? So how does your community where you teach and live have an effect on your quality of life? I mean, you live in Southern California, so I would imagine my own answer, but how does that affect your quality of life?
Tell me the main part of the question one more time. You cut out just a little bit there.
So, how does the community in which you can live affect your quality of life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there really are two, I've found, kinds of teachers. There are the teachers who love to live in the community where they teach. They love seeing students all the time. They love, bumping into them at Walmart or at the gym, things like that. And then there are the teachers who, really like to live, not necessarily totally far away from where they teach, but there are the teachers who don't like to live, I guess, entrenched in the community. And I really think both are fine. It really is whatever preference that you want. I do, however, think that there is a bit of a disconnect sometimes with teachers and students in the communities in which the schools are, because what we often have are what we sometimes have are teachers who will, this is, I did this for years. You live in a fairly affluent, well-educated community, and you drive in to the school community where you teach, and you teach these students, and then you drive out at the end of the day. And so even though you're there all day and you're working with these students, you're not actually that aware of the surrounding area and the culture. You understand the culture of the school, but you don't necessarily understand the greater culture of the surrounding community. And so what I always encourage teachers to do sometimes is, sometimes it can be little tiny things like take a different way home, make a left turn and drive through the neighborhood, every few days, or a different neighborhood on your way to the freeway than just always following the same route home, things like that. But actually, sometimes, one of your students has a soccer game, and the soccer game is across town, and they invite you, or you hear about it, and, going to that and sitting with the parents and sort of allowing yourself to be absorbed into the culture of the neighborhood. If you live in a neighborhood with or if you teach in a neighborhood with a lot of immigrants, refugees, or even just a different economic status, or whatever the case may be, but allowing yourself to kind of be absorbed into that culture a little bit, and just to kind of break yourself from this sort of drive in, drive out sort of routine that you're in. That's a big one. And then, if you are the kind of teacher, I've got a good friend of mine, Martin. He loves working out of the gym, and he sees his former students. He loves, he loves bumping into them in the store. He sort of loves that. And then he talks to them, and he's completely sort of totally intertwined in their lives, not just the year that he's teaching them, but in all of the years to come. And so whatever it is for you, some teachers don't have a choice. They live where they live. They get a job where they take a job because they have an opportunity to take a job. But again, realizing, I think, that school culture is often different from the community culture, and that just because the kids go to school there doesn't necessarily mean that that's how they are outside in their community.
Yeah.
That being said, in terms of quality of life, I mean, if of course, if you can live somewhere that you love, then that's going to help your disposition, your attitude, your quality of life. And if you can learn to love wherever it is that you're living by seeking out good people and, the good restaurants or the parks or whatever that city has to offer. Sometimes we don't get to choose, but if you can find all of the great qualities about a place and really learn to enjoy them, of course, that's going to have, both a small as well as an overall holistic, I guess, effect on, how you teach every single day.
Yeah, I think to that point, learning to make the best out of your situation is huge, and single ways to do that. Like, even if so my school is it can be a very violent, was my son, in a very violent neighborhood, and there can be, the stories that just come back to school with students are very, very different from the kind of community that I grew up in. And to kind of counteract that, because when you are around too much kind of like darkness, or you hear these really just awful tales over and over again, you have to create a community that's positive or uplifting. And so, sort of back to what you said earlier, is I surround myself with teachers that love what they do every day, and that we can be honest with one another, be vulnerable with one another. We can be silly with one another, and building that community inside your school totally counteracts all of those things that are going on around you. So even if something awful did happen, you have someone to share it with. You have someone that's going to, maybe give you a little bit of motivation or advice when you need it, at least to just listen to you when something's going on. And that can have a huge effect on where it is that you're teaching. Very tough school. And even for teachers that feel like their administration's not very good, or their school doesn't run very well, like, you can go ahead and create that kind of world excuse me, that's going to help you stay motivated during the year, help you stay excited, because you have your people that you're with every day.
Yeah.
And that becomes something exciting to invite new people into also. So if a new teacher comes along and you see them like struggling, we have this great we all eat lunch on fifth period every day. It's the best. Like, you should totally be a part of what we're doing, and that's going to help them have a longer life as a teacher as well. So
no, and the truth is that the culture of a school really is formed and then reinforced, one conversation at a time. And so if
Yes.
you're there deciding what kind of conversations, if you are, what do they call it? They call it the energy test, right? So anytime anytime somebody walks into a room, very simply, think of it as the energy test. When somebody walks into a room, are they the kind of person where lots of energy comes into the room, or are they the kind of person where all of the energy is sucked out of the room? Very simple. If they're the person where the room lights up when they walk in, that's probably somebody that you want to have in your network. If they're the kind of person where all the energy is sucked out of the room, then consider not having them as a part of your network.
Yeah, absolutely. Moffat is asking, if you are a grade chair, how do you keep your teams motivated when everyone else is already stressed out about data collection on top of setting up beginning of the year routines? So,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Like, what would be your motive, or how would you keep those folks motivated or help them out?
Yeah. So the question that I think I heard was, if you're your grade level chair or any department chair, how do you kind of keep your team motivated all year long? Is that right? In
the beginning of the year, when you're feeling like there's all this stuff piled on top of you, aside from you'd rather be doing like planning lessons and getting your room together. So what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, I think that this is, more than anything else, a question of leadership. And leadership, hopefully we can all agree, has nothing to do with level or position or rank or title or anything like that. Leadership really happens at every single level. And being the department chair, being, your grade level chair, that's, for many teachers who become teacher leaders, that's sort of the first step, because you realize, oh my gosh, all of a sudden part of my job is no longer just leading this classroom full of teachers, but also, I'm not just leading this classroom full of students, but leading this sort of room full of teachers, or this team of teachers. And so I think that there are a few things. First of all, again, it begins with, as the leader, it begins with your attitude and your determination to bring, to be a positive contributor, to bring positivity and good energy into every single meeting. But then the other thing that I think a lot of that we sometimes miss when we assign people to be department chairs or whatever the case may be. Some people become department chairs because it's very prestigious. They work very hard, and and everybody wants them to lead the department. Some people become department chairs because nobody else wants to do it, so they throw it on the new guy or the new woman or whatever. But actually taking some time and learning about how to properly structure a meeting. When you come to a meeting as the department chair and you run a really good meeting, it may take a few times to kind of get that structure down. But when you run a really good meeting, that is first of all, one of the best things that you can possibly do. When you have a good solid agenda that you stick to, when you have some good processes in place, when you really run a good meeting, it starts on time, it ends on time, that helps people, first of all, tremendously, because they don't, when you can get people to the point where they no longer dread going to meetings, or as they call it, death by meeting, when you get them to the point where they understand why they're going to be there, and what sort of the goal of the meeting is, that makes all the difference in the world. And so I always recommend to people to always ask two questions at the beginning and the end. There's one question at the beginning, one question at the end of every single meeting. And so the first question that anybody in the meeting should be able to answer, or should ask, and then we should be able to answer is, why are we here? Yep. Understanding why we've all gathered here today is really the most important thing. And so, even if you're the department chair and you've got your meeting and you say, okay, I want to tell you why we're here today. And everybody should be able to understand what they're doing there. And then the second question, the question that should always be asked at the end of every meeting is, okay, so what's the plan going forward? When we ask, what is the plan going forward? First of all, everybody understands, okay, we use this time to come up with a plan that's going forward, so this was time that was well spent. And when everybody understands the plan going forward, they can then take the next steps. It's not just, okay, go back to my classroom, throw my meeting notes on the table, and get back to doing what I was always doing. But understanding the plan, and sometimes the plan going forward is, everybody think about this, we're going to meet again next week, and we're going to really get some ideas down that we can implement. Sometimes the plan is, breaking it up and everybody having a different task that they need to complete. Whatever the case may be, when everybody understands the plan going forward, it's much easier to not spend your time, complaining, being tired, being burned out, because you realize you're part of the mission that's happening and this thing is moving forward. And you know what? I got to tell you, if all else fails, bring a plate of food in, bring something kind of cool in, show the funny video, YouTube video, the 2-minute video that you just saw, treat it like you would treat at your classroom, where you want all of the members to be engaged. So, bring some bagels, bring some donuts, whatever the case may be, break it up a little bit and try having some fun.
I think that also, like, planning a meeting like that shows that you care. It's showing that, one, like, when you have a well-planned meeting, respecting everyone's time, that, because we've all been in those meetings that have gone on way too long, that you're like looking at your watch, and now I'm going to wonder who's picking up my kids from school, running too long for, so what I would say for those meetings also is, like, creating an out for people. So like, all right, we're done. If anyone wants to keep talking about this, if you care if we missed something or you want to go back to something, like, here's everyone's out. You can go if you wish, because we're done, and the plan going forward. But if someone's having a particularly hard time, like, building in that time to take and really listen to them. And I think going on with that is this idea of, like, letting folks know that you care, that, like, if you're having a hard time with this, or if this new policy doesn't fit who you are, you're not sure how to implement it, like, all right, well, let's take the time and talk about that. Because, I am, the department chair or the grade level chair, and I seriously want you to succeed. And this goes for students also, like, reminding kids, like, I want more than anything for you to do well. When you do well, everyone else does well too. And so filling in that time to really listen to folks and their concerns and helping them with whatever you can help them with is a really, really great way to lead.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do at the beginning of a meeting too is, I'll just throw this in, is to just say, hey, before we start this meeting, really quickly, let's just go around. Everybody just share the biggest challenge that you're struggling with right now, in your classroom, and just to kind of listen, and everybody has just 30 seconds to go around, but just getting on that same page, which is hey, why are we here? We're here to do good work. We're here to be a collaborative team, and we're here to improve the lives of our students, or whatever reason that it is that we all wake up in the morning, and to just kind of go around and to just share and listen to each other. It's really huge, and it takes a minute or two at the beginning of a meeting.
Yeah, it takes no time, and it can mean everything. Naturally, Niani is asking, what are your thoughts on restorative justice? Do you think that we've gotten too lenient on the youth? Some teachers have told me that many days they don't get to academics because of behavior. Take on that. Like, how do you handle discipline in your class, and does it take up too much time ever?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually do talk a lot these days, especially when I'm speaking at conferences and things like that, about social emotional learning, which is, to some extent sort of the new big buzzword in education, but also something that's really important that kids really need to know about. And especially, with restorative justice, to get back to your original question, here's what I found. Some schools do it really, really well, and some schools don't. And some teachers do it really, really well, and some teachers don't. And so, I don't think that I'm in a position to, I don't think anyone's really in a position to say, yeah, restorative justice works or it doesn't work. The truth is, it's like anything else. When it is implemented really well, then things go a whole lot better. And when it's sort of lazily implemented, and it's treated, or it's sort of branded by the teacher or the school as something that, oh, we have to do this now, then it doesn't go really well. And so when kids understand the why behind it, when they understand why that is a part of but either your discipline policy or your procedures, things like that, and then things go a whole lot better. And I think, though, as a teacher, it really is, it's finding that balance and having to make that decision on, okay, how much time do I spend on, having kids discuss their conflict at the peace table and coming up with a solution, versus how much time do I really spend on, some of the harder academics and things like that. And so it's really sort of finding that balance. And sometimes that balance is different every single day, but as teachers, we're constantly having to gauge, how much time do I spend on this? How much time do I spend on this? How can I get maximum impact on this, on that? What can I cut out? Things like that. And so, I think that it really just comes on more of a teacher by teacher basis. And if you're a teacher who truly believes in the power of, restorative justice, who has been successful with that, who needs to try something new, so this is something that you're trying, then, throw yourself into that. If you're more of a teacher who, is more of a top-down sort of traditional discipline, but that works and it creates a positive, effective environment, then, you've got to play on that strength as well. But I also think, sometimes you got to stretch yourself. You got to be willing to learn a new technique or a new philosophy, things like that. You can't say, hey, I've used this discipline plan for the last 10 years, and there's never been a problem. Why should I change it now? To kind of avoid having that sort of attitude, and to always be willing to consider new things, especially, today's students are much different than the students of 5 years ago, and those are much different than the students from 5 years or before that, and they'll be much different than the students 5 years from now. And so being able to stay up on different techniques, on different philosophies of teaching and understanding, especially as our student population becomes much more diverse, racially, economically, I think it's a really, really good idea to at least understand a lot of the core principles behind those.
Yeah, one of the things I tell new teachers, and this goes right into what kind of you were saying, is don't ever come into my class and see what I do and then try to like completely emulate that, because what works for me may not work for you. Like even so, I love the idea of like of restorative justice in the classroom. I like talking to kids about what happened. I like seeing like the reasons why they happened, or how we could work differently, or how I might work differently with the students in that class. But I think, you know, I also do, I have a bunch of like kind of crazy ideas that I do that I tell folks like, don't do this with kids.
Right.
Like if I am going to, you know, I have like, so if I have this thing that if kids fall asleep in my class, I have a tiny water pistol and I'll shoot your leg with it and that wakes you up. And I know that works for me. It's never backfired on me, but I would never tell this is what you should do to kids, because that could totally backfire on you and you lose your job or get punched in the face. I don't know. But, or when I use humor for a lot of things in class. But if you're not naturally funny, or if that doesn't come natural for you, you shouldn't do it. Just the same way as like when I started teaching, I was just never very good at not smiling or not using jokes in class. That was a stretch for me. And I started finding that when I let my personality out a little bit, or I found those things that came naturally for me, that worked for me. Building relationships with students comes very, very naturally for me, but it doesn't for everyone. And I know tons of teachers that I really admire that are not interested in building relationships. Like for them, they can put their foot down, or they can give like, you know, that mom stare to kids, and for them in an instant, but that's what works for them. And I think that it takes time. I think, you know, a lot of times we spend so much time in like the best way to teach kids, but we don't spend enough time like looking at ourselves and figuring out what's the best way that I can be a teacher, and not just like learning a certain, you know, new program or something like that, but like, who are you? What works best for you in the classroom? That can really benefit the kids more than anything.
Yeah, and I know we're getting along on time here, so I'll close with this, you know, just along that line. But I've got a poster up in my room, and it's just a way for kids to format their math papers. You know, they've got to write their name, got to write this left, and circle their numbers, circle their final answers, and you know, it's just a way to keep their work neat. But at the top of the poster, I put Kajitani style. And so, you know, it really is just a way for them to format their homework papers. But when I'm walking around checking homework, I can say, you know, hey, you know, did you circle? I don't have to say, hey, how come you didn't circle your final answer? I just say, is that Kajitani style? And, you know, they say no, and they have to fix it. But what happens is Kajitani style starts to become something much more than just how you format your homework paper. It becomes a part of the culture of the classroom. And so when I walk in with a new haircut, the kids go, hey, nice haircut. That's a Kajitani cut right there. And what happens is the kids start to form their own style. And, you know, a loud and rambunctious student like Myra, we just get to call that Myra style, or a quiet and shy kid like Victor, we get to, you know, celebrate that as Victor's style. And all of the weird and awkward things that our students walk in thinking about themselves, let's be honest, all of the weird and awkward things that we as adults often walk in thinking about ourselves, instead we just get to celebrate that as our style. And, you know, when I first started rapping, I thought I had to be like Snoop Dogg or Dr. Dre, and you know, I'm still hopeful, but I had to be that weird and wacky math teacher who was willing to kind of get up and rap. And it's not about rapping, you know, it's just about taking the things that the kids love and the things that you love and allowing that to be a part of your style. And every great teacher, every effective teacher, every happy teacher will tell you that they are just, you know, an amalgamation of all of these little things that they've seen over their life that have made them the teacher that they are. And so whatever that is, you know, your strengths, your weaknesses, your insecurities, just let that be part of your own style, and go forth and just, you know, be proud of that and rock your own style in the classroom, and then share that with others so they can start to form their own style.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's a really good place to end. Also, that's a good send off point. I will. So Alex, could you tell people where on social they could find you if they're looking to find out more stuff about you? Where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to send me a friend request on Facebook if you'd like. It's just Alex Kajitani. It's Alex Kajitani. Love to post different things, keep teachers motivated all year long. On Twitter, I'm at Alex Kajitani. I also am really excited because we just launched the first of its kind online times tables training program, and so I'm on a new mission to get every kid to master their times tables, because I think it would be a real game changer. And so if you know a kid who needs to master their times tables, or you're looking for it for your class, please check out multiplicationnation.com. Be sure to put the .com at the end. Don't just Google Multiplication Nation, but multiplicationnation.com. And then my own personal website, alexkajitani.com, filled with resources. You can check out all of my books. I got videos on the blog and a link to my YouTube channel and things like that. And if I can help in any way, please email me through the website. I answer every email that's intentionally sent to me, and I love coming on shows like this. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing every single day, and everybody who's out there listening and who's joined in. Just keep on rocking it, Kajitani style.
That's it. Thanks, Alex. I really, really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye-bye. All right, before we go, I didn't want to hold my guest up any longer. Everything that he sort of mentioned at the end that Alex mentioned, I'll have the links for that below on YouTube, and you can go and see those there. And if you have questions or comments and you're watching this as part of the rebroadcast, you can go ahead and leave it in the bottom part. But I didn't want to leave without addressing my friend question really quickly. She said, honest question, here are we sometimes enabling kids' behaviors when we pay too much kids in a positive or negative way, teaching younger children they become addicted to your attention? I 100% true, and I think that because I think that we often give too much attention to the kids who are in trouble all the time and the kids who are doing great all the time, and we forget those other students. So I think that it becomes learning how to sometimes maybe ignore behaviors, or letting kids know that, like, you're not taking up the whole class. This is the amount of time that I'm willing to give this sort of behavior, but I'm not going to keep like pouring all of my time and effort into you. Because what ends up happening is those middle of the road kids that end up flying under the radar, they're your guys and girls that are going to end up failing by the end of the year, that just flew under the radar, and it just you didn't realize that they were failing. You didn't realize that they didn't understand because you were too busy putting out fires all the time. And so sometimes a way that I'll deal with that is I'll try and give the kids that are typically like require a lot of attention in class, I'll give them love outside of the class. So like maybe I'll say something to them in lunch, or I'll say something to them in the hallway, or I'll make sure I'm putting that time in so that when they come to class, they're not like as hungry for my attention. Because, being a male teaching in an all boys school, I have a lot of boys that don't have dads at home, and so they are hungry for that kind of like attention from men a lot of times. And so I try to do that in the hallway, before school, after school, during homeroom, in those kind of in-between moments, so that it doesn't just come down to what I'm willing to give during class. Because kids, they can often feel slighted if you don't. So yeah, I think it can be enabling, and I think kids to have boundaries and to realize that you're not the only one in class right now. Like there's other too, and I care about you, but I need to like with some time today too, because I don't want him to fall behind either. And I think when you're honest with students like that, they'll say like, oh, okay, like I get like I want that dude to succeed too, or that's my homie and I want him to do well also. So I think that helps them as well. So next week, so this is our last Thursday broadcast for some time. We'll be back to only Tuesdays because the school year is going back and I need to be a dad when I'm at home. And so next week is, I'm going to put his name wrong, but I'll have it right for next week. Rohan Shah. He creates educational rap songs. So that's interesting. We have two educational rap song creators at the same 2 weeks in a row. And he's known as MC School, SLE. He will be on with me next Tuesday, and I think he's from Detroit also, right? I think he's from Detroit also, so Detroit teacher. Someone else from your neck of the woods. So he'll be on next Tuesday. Everyone, Thanks so much. I hope that your beginning of the school year starts off fantastic. If I can help with anything, please hook it up in the comment section, and I will get back to every single person as quickly as I can. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Peace.